Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into the Green 19 podcast from JS Online and PackersNews.com. I'm Cassidy Hill, joined as always by Tom Silverstein and Ryan Wood here at Lambeau Field, where the Packers have gotten an overtime 31-28 win over the Dallas Cowboys. Guys, a win that they needed as a team emotionally, mentally, mathematically to stay in playoff contention. I mean, I know it's not all their problems are fixed with one win, and it's still a long way to go. But when they were staring down the barrel of a 6-game losing streak, how big was this performance tonight?
It was important to win a game at home. I think we talked about it. They definitely needed to win one of these two games, and ideally they need to win both. Anything's possible. You know, I didn't rule them out last week, and I still don't rule them out. The NFC is really bad, and I think the Cowboys are a prime example of that. The Cowboys, as I said in my column today, everybody is flawed. There isn't a team that's just, the Eagles are the closest to the sure thing. I mean, even the Vikings eked out, a game they should have lost. And they have some flaws too, but everybody is flawed. And the Cowboys came in here having won 6 of their last 7 games, and they fell apart just like the Packers did against Detroit. So I think we're just seeing all of that, and it's going to be whoever gets hot at the end, I think, who survives.
Before you jump in, I want to pull out something with Spoon's comment for you to address. He said the Cowboys fell apart, kind of like the Packers did versus the Lions. I felt like this was a different game than Packers versus Lions. Do you feel like the Cowboys fell apart, or do you feel like the Packers actually punched back?
Well, both. I mean, when you cough up 14-point lead, you come back from 14-point lead. It's both. Spoon, I love you. Want to challenge you here.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the Vikings would be a sure thing, a for real thing, if they were in different uniforms. If they weren't the Vikings with their history and their successive failures. That's a really talented football team. The Eagles, they win every week, so it's hard to discard them. I mean, I'm more...
No. I wanted to preface that with Eagles, Vikings, and even maybe the Giants are going to be playoff teams.
So you're saying
down,
there's
they're
wild card
playoffs
spots.
Time. But I still do think that everybody is flawed to some degree.
What do you think the Vikings' flaw is? I don't know if you got into that.
I think that defensively that you can do some stuff against them, that they're not really deep. Their offensive line isn't that great. I think you can harass Kirk Cousins. I think they're pretty strong otherwise. Their pass rush is really good, but I don't think they're like a dominant team. Look at all the teams, how close their games have been. That's probably the best thing about them is that they win close games.
Winning in Buffalo, man.
Yeah, but Josh Allen was hurt.
Yeah, true.
And, he was definitely not himself at all.
I think that's a really talented team. I get your point on the offensive line. That's been their bugaboo for years now. Cassidy, to your opening comment, how they needed this win in all kinds of different ways, the Packers. Emotionally, let's break that one down first. Matt LaFleur was emotional at the podium. I mean, he teared up at the podium. He was very transparent on how hard this 5-game losing streak has been. Let's keep in mind, they never lost 2 back-to-back regular season games in a row before this losing streak began. To lose 5 straight, to lose 5 straight, it was hard. Aaron Rodgers was as transparent as, and he's usually transparent, but as transparent as you could ever find, talking about the emotional low to high from last week to this week, saying that it was depressive after the Lions game, admitting that there was a voice in his head trying to knock him off that confidence perch. When have we ever heard Aaron Rodgers talking about some shakiness in his own confidence? I can't remember that ever happening, and he did that tonight. He said that it was a rock bottomish low point after the Lions. He came in this week, and for whatever reason, inexplicable, he just felt all week like they were going to win. They're down 2 touchdowns entering the fourth quarter. The Cowboys, all time, had never lost a game when trailing 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter until now. So from an emotional standpoint, it was cathartic. From a mathematical standpoint, they're 4-6. They were 4-6 in 2016. They ran the table. Does lightning strike twice in the same spot?
Scientifically, yes, it does. But
it can. But how often? I have a hard time seeing it. To Spoon's point, I think the best thing that they have going for them is a very shallow NFC. This NFC is much worse, much less depth than what they ran into in 2016 when they ran the table. That was a much better conference. That might open the door, but I have a hard mathematically in terms of the relevancy of the season. I think this was a big win for them cathartically. I still have a hard time seeing it.
When they were down in the fourth quarter, the new safety, Jonathan Abram, several guys talked about this tonight. He was just going up and down the sideline, telling guys, we're not going to lose this game. We're going to win it by 3. Get back up. We're not going to lose this game. And Rasul Douglas was telling me after the game, he was like, we needed that. We just needed somebody to tell us we're not going to lose.
Fresh blood.
Yeah.
A guy from the Raiders.
The Raiders, right?
The worst.
Who lost to Jeff Saturday today.
Yeah. The Jags last week. Jeez. But, and Abram didn't play.
That's how low the Packers were. That They got inspired by a guy from the Raiders.
They were low, though. They were really,
They were,
really low.
and that they just kind of needed that boost to be like, hey, we're done with this feeling. Let's find a way to get over it. I mean, golly, Aaron Rodgers laid a block tonight. like, on a play that was not designed for him to do so. I mean, so to your point, yeah, cathartically probably felt like he was exercising some demons. As we said, though, Jonathan Abram, for as much of a spark as he might have provided on the sidelines, did not play on defense despite some defensive changes. We saw Darnell Savage play in the slot during some sub packages, and when that happened, Rudy Ford came in at safety. Rudy Ford with 2 huge interceptions that led to perhaps some of the best complimentary football we've actually seen the Packers play this season, because they had not been doing so thus far. With Eric Stokes out and Rasul Douglas moving outside, we kind of expected Keyshawn Nixon to be in the slot, because that's what the Packers had been doing. When Jair Alexander was hurt, that's what they did. It makes a little bit more sense now as to why LaFleur kind of snapped at me on Wednesday and said he didn't want to talk about that lineup.
And I talked with Darnell Savage this week, and he was really skittish. I talked a lot about the slot. He was really skittish on Thursday about playing in the slot, what he wanted to play in the slot. How we know why. By Thursday, he knew he was playing in the slot.
Right. So, Spoon, let me just start with you. Is this lineup with Savage playing in sub in the slot and Ford at safety, did it just happen to work against the Cowboys, or is this sustainable?
Well, I think it's their best option, and I don't know why it took so long for him to go to it. So I asked him if Rasul Douglas could play safety. Oh, well, we don't have anyone to replace Rasul Douglas.
Rudy Ford's been on this team.
Well, yeah, Rudy Ford is there, and Rasul Douglas. At that time, Eric Stokes was healthy, so I don't get it. I think Savage. We'll see, because this is the first time the Cowboys, any team, has seen him in the slot regularly. And he played man coverage a lot, and that's what he does really well. The one thing he didn't offer them was anything on the blitz. He blitzed probably a half dozen times and didn't come close. He's just too small. It's when Rasul Douglas comes, he brings some weight with him, and Savage has to learn how to do that. To be an effective slot, you gotta be able to blitz. But I thought he covered pretty well. He gave up a few, but everybody gives up a few in the slot,
especially to CeeDee Lamb.
And it should be noted, though, one of the CeeDee Lamb touchdowns when Lamb split Savage and Jair Alexander.
Oh, that was
Jair
all
Alexander
Jair
took
Alexander.
complete blame for that in the postgame.
It was. It
Did he
was
say
man
what
coverage.
happened on that play?
He said he fell asleep.
I didn't know if he was trying to jump an inside route or what, but yeah, he fell asleep.
Yeah,
is the
Lamb
way to
just
put
put
it.
a really good move on him and smoked him. He had his ups and downs. Jair Alexander had his ups and downs today. He came back on that 4th and 3. That was a huge play.
Yep.
But, yeah, I mean, I thought for the most part that worked. And it just is beyond me that he hadn't even considered it before. And, you know, it allows them to blitz a little bit more because they got a guy who can play man coverage in the slot. Anyway.
It's the second time this season that an injury has prompted this coaching staff, one on each side of the ball, to make a change that everyone thought needed to be changed. Let's not forget, Josh Nijman didn't actually go to right tackle until Jake Hansen got hurt. He was going to be the solution, and then at that point they're like, okay, you got to change the interior around and put Josh Nijman on right tackle. And it wasn't until and in this case, I think it's pretty clear because Jonathan Abram was not going to play today on defense. He just didn't have enough time this week to really have a significant role. It had to be Rudy Ford. And the injury to Eric Stokes meant that Rasul Douglas had to be outside, which meant that you're missing a slot guy now. You have to put Darnell Savage in. If not for that injury to Eric Stokes, I don't know you see Darnell Savage in the slot. And he just looks so much more comfortable. Like, yeah, he gave up a couple catches to C.D. Lamb. Most DBs in the NFL do that. C.D. Lamb is a good receiver. He had 1 PBU in 9 games all season. He had 2 today. Now, the second one didn't count because it was 12 men on the field, but that didn't really affect his cover on the play. He had 2 today. He looked when you put him in a situation where there's less thinking, there's just more read and react, let your athleticism take over. It simplified the game for Darnell Savage, and it's beyond me that it took this long to make that move when, hey, if only we had a safety to replace Darnell Savage. Well, the guy that you replaced him with had 2 picks.
You think there's less? I'm trying to decide if I'm going to agree or argue with you. I think there's more thinking before the snap in safety and less after, sure. But there's more. At nickel. I think there's more before the snap.
I think that safety is a much more complicated position than nickel. Not even close.
Being that much closer to the ball?
Yes, it's more read and react. The game happens a lot faster. There's much less to take into consideration. It's far less complex than safety.
Yeah, a lot of times you're disguising coverages when you're at safety. When you're in the slot, you're basically playing man-to-man. And most of the time you're playing man-to-man. That's all you got to do is cover the guy.
This is your assignment.
Sometimes, you know, they'll play off and play a zone coverage. But I don't think the slot is horribly complicated unless it's, you know, there's a lot of blitzing or some kind of really fancy defense.
Especially compared to safety.
Yeah.
Safety is one of the more complex positions on the field.
Let's look at the front 7 before we move on to offense. No Rashawn Gary today. This is the first time they have been without him. You're going to miss someone like that, no matter what. But do you feel like there were enough changes made to sort of counteract his loss? Spoon?
No. No, not even close. I mean, I continue to be impressed with Enigbari. I just think he's their only option for pass rushing to replace Gary. And he got a hand on one of those interceptions. I think it was the second one. He tipped that ball, and I think that was a big reason why it got picked off. But man, there was one play where Ladarius Hamilton just got crushed into the middle, and Tony Pollard, it might have been Pollard or it might have been the other guy.
Davis.
Yeah, but I mean, it was just embarrassing. So Garvin, I thought, played a really solid game on all the bootlegs. Like he kept his, you know, discipline. You know, Rashawn Gary on some of those would have chased him. But Garvin refused to get fooled when Dak Prescott ran the bootlegs, and I think that helped quite a bit. But Yeah, you can't replace that guy. I mean, there's just no way, and they'll have to ride with Enigbari, I think, as their pass rusher. It's just the way it's going to be. Their run defense was pretty bad again, and I don't know what the deal is. I don't know where Kenny Clark has kind of disappeared a little bit, and I'm not sure why. It's not lack of effort. It never is with him. That's going to be an issue. That's a flaw of theirs, is that they, just like the Cowboys, they can't stop the run.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if they had Ezekiel Elliott today, right? Garvin had the PBU on one of those boots against Dak Prescott, which is a big play.
Yeah.
You know who I thought was really good? And as a whole, 30,000-foot view, I thought the pass rush got better as the game went on, which is probably as expected. I mean, you lose a Rashawn Gary. It's going to take a little while to figure that out. I did think it got better, but Jerron Reed played really well.
Mm-hmm.
He missed the sack, or the safety, and he missed another sack on the fourth down. But that fourth down, his pressure, his hit, he had 3 quarterback hits, and that fourth down hit on Dak Prescott forced an incompletion. I mean,
it's hard to bring down Dak Prescott.
It is. It definitely is. You know, he's had a really solid season for them, and he was good today, and that's
except for the interceptions.
Yeah.
You know, both. I don't know how much he shouldn't have thrown the first one, and the second one, I don't know.
No, Jerron Reed was good today.
Oh, I thought you said.
I was like, wait a second, Jerron Reed.
I was like, wait a second.
No,
yeah.
Jerron Reed was good today.
Yeah,
and he's been quietly pretty solid all season. You took the point right out of my mouth spoon. Where Kenny Clark has gone, I don't know, and he's a guy that's got to fight off double, sometimes triple teams, and that's going to happen. But that's going to happen. That happens to all the elite interior defensive linemen in this league. It's part of life that they learn to live with. And for Kenny Clark, where does the missing production come from without Rashawn Gary? It's got to come more from Kenny Clark.
You know who has impressed me, especially sort of getting thrust into a role, is Isaiah McDuffie.
Mm-hmm.
And with him there, allowing Quay Walker to play a little more on the edge. I mean, he can use his speed. He chased down 2 or 3 plays tonight from behind.
Yeah. That was really nice. I think it was Pollard that was a swing pass.
Yes.
You know, out there, and nobody else on that team, I think, could have made that tackle except him and closed on it that fast. But, yeah, I agree. McDuffie is really good between the tackles. If you can keep him from getting matched up with somebody in coverage, then you're doing okay.
Which is what Quay Walker's there for.
Yeah. But, you know, when Devondre Campbell comes back, that'll help their run defense some too. I mean,
in theory, he's had a kind of a rough year, it feels like.
I don't think it's been rough. I think it's been not as perfect as it was last year.
That's fair.
Mean, he was almost perfect last year. And that's highly unusual. I mean, he had a contract year. And now he's still a really good player. He's just not doing everything perfect.
That's fair. Let's flip to the offensive side of the ball. They had more. I think they popped a graphic up on NBC Sports or Fox Sports during the game about the passes downfield, that it had been more in the past couple of games than it had been in like the first 6 games combined. Still ran the ball extremely well. 207 yards. Aaron Jones ended with 24 rushes, 138 yards. A.J. Dillon with 13 for 65. That's 37 touches between those two guys just running the ball. I mean, that's what you want, right, as an offense? And we talked so much about the run game opening up the pass game. And in the past few weeks when they have attempted to do that, the pass game just hasn't been there. Tonight, it was there, thanks in large part to Christian Watson. What can the emergence of him finally maybe, and again, this is just one game, but maybe sort of turning that rookie corner after having a lot of setbacks with injuries, what could that do for this downfield passing game, Ryan?
I mean, guys, what have I been saying for weeks? It's not enough to just run the football. No NFL offense can live on handoffs alone. You have to be able to stretch the field at some point. Pick and choose your spots. Be patient. Don't be careless with it like they were against the Giants in London. Just chuck deep. This offense can't do that. But this, to me, was exactly the game plan and the production distribution that they need, which is, Aaron Jones had 24 carries, really 25. It was the first play of the game. Was a little flip to him. It was called a pass. 25 real carries, the most he's had all season. They had 38 real carries between the two. Aaron Rodgers only threw the ball 20 times, but 3 receivers had a 20-yard catch today. Allen Lazard took a little 3rd-and-1 slant in overtime and turned it into 36 yards. Christian Watson had not 1 but 2 touchdowns that were deep down the field, 39-yard, 58-yarder. This is what they need. They've had to find something down the field in the passing game to be able to complement and support their run game. And there's not a coincidence that they finally cracked the 30-point mark for the first time all season. It's because they did everything through the run, a ton of action fakes, and that set up their opportunities to hit deep shots down the field, and the playmakers on the perimeter actually finish those plays. This is what they need from here on out. If they do this, it will be a much better offense. Run first, action fake, and actually get some deep shots to complement the run game.
Spoon, after the game, I was in the elevator with Brian Gutekunst riding down, and he kind of stepped in. He leaned up against the back wall, closed his eyes, and just let out the biggest sigh of relief that you've heard. Probably for a lot of reasons. But he's taken some heat for trading up to draft Christian Watson where he did. Is this what they wanted out of him?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think he showed everything that they saw in him. He's a remarkable athlete, and we knew that, I mean, he is, Calvin Johnson-esque. He's got all the tools. He just, needed some confidence. And the drops they knew about the drops. The drops were part of his game, a big part of why a lot of people didn't, why he got passed up in the first round, because he's got first-round talent by far. But they just thought he didn't have very good hands, and he showed that again, that he didn't early on. But it was important that he came through. I just don't think you can you can't replicate that kind of speed in a game. You can't have somebody, you can't scheme that, is what I'm trying to say. You can't scheme that kind of speed. You want a guy to, run a go route, he can just win it. And he's their last chance. I mean, he was their last chance all along since the trade deadline, I mean, he was their only chance to get something explosive in the pass game. And so he came through. Now, Dallas did not spend a lot of time on him. Trayvon Diggs, after the game, I asked him, did you even know who Christian Watson was? And he said, I didn't really know any of them. I didn't really think that much about any of them.
Good reason.
You can't blame him, really.
No. I mean, he was like, honestly, I didn't really think about any of them. And now, Christian Watson's, people keep an eye on him. They'll, in certain situations, they're not going to let him run man to man. But that's good, because the Packers do want teams to keep their safeties back so they can, like you said, run the ball. They got to keep running the ball. They got to keep giving Aaron Jones the ball. And again, the Cowboys are flawed, just like the Packers. They can't stop the run. I was talking to Malik Hooker in the locker room afterward, and I said, they kept hitting you with that Aaron Jones, pitch.
A little zone pitch.
Yeah, and, were you guys ready for that? Or and he was like, people have been doing that on us all year. It's no different than anybody game we've played. We suck against the run. And so it's like every time you got to find what that team's flaw is, and you got to work it. And they worked it against the Cowboys, so give them credit for that.
Did you guys see the look on Christian Watson's face after that second drop? The cameras caught a close-up of his face. And you want to talk about a dude whose confidence was shot. I mean, the way that I described it, the only way I could think of was the hope was just drained from his eyes. I mean, it was just exasperation and, oh, my God, how can I catch a break? You know, two drops back-to-back on the opening drive. And to come back from that was impressive. But the way that he came back from that, everyone, even Christian Watson, even though he was asked about it after the game, he said, I don't remember which play you're talking about. Everyone remembers the first play of the season. Mm-hmm. Everyone remembers him dusting Patrick Peterson 3 steps behind him on the very opening play in Minnesota and dropping a 75-yard touchdown. And Aaron Rodgers, I asked him after the game, it's a long list, 3 touchdowns, only the 4th Packers rookie receiver ever to have 3 touchdowns. James Lofton, Billy Houghton, and Max McGee, the only other 3. Which one to you was the most impressive, the most important? And he said it's got to be the first one. And the reason why is because when Christian Watson got here, everyone knew the hands were inconsistent. As you said, he's got the talent, the athleticism, but he cannot consistently catch. And where he really struggled was, according to Aaron Rodgers, was over the shoulder, tracking it with his eyes. What was that first play of the season? Over the shoulder, tracking, and it hit him right in the hands for a 75-yard score, and he dropped it. It's the same type of play. On the right side of the field, he goes deep, he gets open, the ball's over his shoulder. This time he catches it.
It was a much tougher catch.
And he had missed one. Yeah. And he missed one like that earlier in the game, almost exactly like it.
Well, later in the game when he didn't track it, it was after the touchdown when he didn't track. Right. But that's been his Achilles heel, is not just catching, but specifically tracking it over his eyes. If he's able to do that consistently, then the athleticism takes over. Everything they did tonight, it was good. I don't know if they can replicate this week in and week out. If they do, they will start to win, but I don't know that they can.
To me, the most impressive play, that I understand what you're saying exactly. But the 7-yard touchdown, he just ran right by 2 guys. I mean, those 2 guys, that's it. He's their guy, and he just left them both in the dust. And that's just something you can't teach. You just can't, and you can't scheme.
He did that on the 39-yarder too. It was similar play. I mean, and the one with the 39-yarder is that their corner had inside leverage on what was supposed to be a crossing route, so it took that away. He made a really good adjustment 5 yards downfield, where instead of cutting it across immediately, he went upfield behind the corner and then cut it across, which was improvisation, and a rookie who's able to read coverage and translate that to his talent. But yeah, I mean, both of those were crossing routes, one shallow, one deep. A lot of those things that it wasn't just talent. I mean, he had a really good night for himself.
For as much as we have harped on Rodgers, exasperation with these rookies and sort of forcing it to Lazard, Tunyon, Cobby when he's out there. I know you were in on Rodgers tonight, right? What did he have to say about being willing to go back to Watson after those drops?
Well, what I thought Matt LaFleur had to say was especially interesting, because I asked him, Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers went back over to him on the sideline after those drops and said, we're coming right back to you. Keep your head up. And if you saw the look on his face again after that second drop, he probably needed that pep talk. And I asked Matt LaFleur, was that out of necessity because there's no one else? Or have you actually seen something tangible behind the scenes in practices and meetings that gave you an idea that this type of thing was possible? He said it was both. But he acknowledged that, yeah, it's necessity. Like they don't have anyone else. To your point, Spoon, he is their last chance because he's the talented guy. It's got to be him, and they know that. I thought it was really interesting. Aaron Rodgers said, keep in mind, Aaron Rodgers has been pretty hard on the rookies. The mental mistakes, he's been pretty harsh. He said that Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson are guys that get really down on themselves. as young guys, they're very
I wonder
hard on
why.
themselves. He said that he early in the season, I don't know if this was camp or the first couple weeks, he went over to Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon and said, keep an eye on these two guys to make sure they don't get too down on themselves.
Well, how about you be the guy who props them up like he did today?
I set you up
You
for
know,
that.
what is so hard about that? To, go over to the guy and say, I'm coming back to you.
Yeah.
You know? Where was this weeks ago?
Instead of just hammering him on
Yeah.
Pat McAfee every single week.
I know. It's just beyond me. And I just don't think that is a great way to approach it.
Especially with young guys
Yeah.
who, are hard on themselves on their own.
Right. And it's not like they're not. Like, there's some guys who aren't in the playbook or they don't
Yeah.
practice well
Those
or
two are.
Yeah.
whatever. But those two guys are like model citizens, and work harder than anybody. So, yeah, that kind of irks me a little bit.
Romeo Dobbs told me one time, he said, I'm so lucky I have Kenny Clark next to me because he keeps me out of my head. So Kenny Clark has become Romeo Dobbs' like therapist
Yeah,
over
his
there.
muse.
He's become his therapist over there in the locker room.
Can we also address, as long as I am the Rodgers behavior specialist.
You are.
You know
are.
him inside
PhD.
and out.
PhD over here.
Am I wrong, or was he out of line in screaming at LaFleur on the sideline?
I was about to
there?
bring that up.
To me, you got to remember that
Yeah.
LaFleur's got to be the guy who's in charge of the locker room.
Yeah.
Aaron, you are not the head coach.
Sort of undermines him.
It does undermine him. And I think he was wrong. In my opinion, I think Rodgers was wrong. I think LaFleur was correct in the way he handled it.
Why?
So this was just to set up, and just in case people are falling behind or not remembering, this was the 2-minute drive at the end of the first half. Essentially a 2-minute drive. It was within 2 minutes. And they ran 2 plays in a minute off of the clock.
This was the end of the regulation. They had the ball back with
Regulation,
1:38
I'm
left
sorry.
at the end of the fourth quarter.
I apologize.
I'm curious, Boone, because to me, I think that you can certainly have a debate on whether or not it's good to scream at your head coach in front of cameras on the sideline during a game. But I'm not sure I see where Aaron Rodgers is coming from. I mean, they ran 2 plays in a minute, and
Doesn't Rodgers call the plays in the 2-minute offense?
he didn't today though. He didn't today, which
Why
I
did
think
that-
is
They
another.
weren't in the 2-minute, really. They were in
Right.
more of a standard offense, which is what really pissed him
Yeah.
off, that, LaFleur didn't give him the keys to the
Yeah.
to the car.
But I think between Shirley clearly not being in the 2-minute, not having the autonomy at the line of scrimmage to direct the drive with the play calls, Aaron Rodgers, but the clock management as well. As Aaron Rodgers said, he felt like they were 30 yards away from going and winning a game in regulation, and they were very, very passive.
So did he in the 49ers game when he went 3 and out, 3 different times, and they kept giving the 49ers the ball back. He if he had it his way on 3rd down, if they hadn't run all that time off the clock, Dallas could have got the ball back with a minute left.
But you could argue if they hadn't ran all the time off the clock, they could actually run it, especially with 1 timeout on that 3rd and 1.
They still could have.
They were down to what, less than 30 seconds at that point?
Yeah, 30 seconds when
And
that
it cost a
play came
timeout,
off.
right?
If they run it. But even if they pass it, 3rd and 1, since when is he against passing on 3rd and 1?
That's what the touchdown was.
I mean, give me a break. LaFleur did not want to leave McCarthy time to get in field goal range, which he could have. He easily could have. And I have no problem with the way he handled that. I really don't.
With the way he called the plays in that situation.
I don't know what the plays were. I'm just saying
The clock management.
don't stop the clock with a minute 38. So you run Aaron Jones, don't stop the clock right away, because the clock isn't your enemy. The yardage is. You need to get down the field, and you need to not score too soon.
Because they were still in their own territory when they punted, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I think there could have been a little bit more hurry up at the end. I'm with you. I don't think you leave the Cowboys time, but with a little more hurry up, they do have the option that I didn't think they really had to run the ball on that 3rd and 1. And had they actually put together a drive, the clock was going to be an issue for them.
It was, but I've seen Rodgers manipulate the clock like that. The 49ers game, how much time was left in that? 54
43
seconds?
37 seconds.
Wow, we
last
all
season.
just said vastly different times.
Yeah,
Last season was 37
I thought it was
seconds.
40-something.
So, remember, all he's got to do is get into field goal range, and he's at the 42.
If we're comparing to last year, though, it's a in terms of explosiveness, it is a much different offense this year than last year.
Could you have gone, this may be a naive question, could you have gone hurry up to flip the field position and then run the clock?
Well, no, because if you throw an incompletion, so let's say they throw it on 1st down and it's incomplete, okay? They throw it on
Stops
2nd
the clock.
down and it's complete and they call a timeout. Now it's 3rd and 1 and you call a play and you don't get it. There's probably a minute 20 left because Dallas is going to call a timeout right away. Mm-hmm. And so they got a minute 20 to drive on a punt until you start calling timeouts after you get a 1st down. Once you get a 1st down, then you start using all your timeouts.
Well, they only had one. I don't
well, they
think
had
the issue
two to start the
They had two at
drive.
the drive.
I think the issue is that they didn't give themselves enough time to run the full offense, and it would have been an issue
But
had they gotten first down.
I don't buy that. I think they could have run or passed in that situation. They still had a timeout left.
You know what's interesting is that the way that Matt LaFleur handled the end of regulation is really how he handled the entire game. Twice, one in each half, they had a 4th and short in plus territory where they lined their offense on the field and took a delay of game penalty instead of going for it. How many times in the past have we seen from the plus 40 to 45 yard line, Matt LaFleur go for a 4th and 4?
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't do that this time, which fits this team much better. They played the field position game and gave their defense a better position, setting up with a long field. That's what they've needed to do. I said last week that they didn't take the field goals. They went for two too early. They left points on the field, not knowing his team. It was a better approach there. I don't think it was a bad approach in general, but I do think that they let enough time go by that it would have been an issue. I think had they gone on and gotten that 1st down, and they would have ran into a problem.
But it's a risk reward. I mean, they won the game, and it turned out that Dallas didn't get the ball at the end of the regulation, so you can't really argue that it was wrong. You can argue that it was.
They had it for like 2 plays at the end
maybe,
of regulation.
But they didn't really have a real chance
Yeah.
at the end of regulation.
So, I don't know.
It did work out.
Either way, I still think it's like, all right, do you really have to just go off on your head coach like that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not a good look. I mean, come on. I thought he acted a lot better today, all through the game. His body language was better. He wasn't, he
didn't look miserable.
Even down 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and even the drops, he wasn't like, oh God, and
Look
all
what he
of
did
that.
with Christian Watson after the second drop. Yeah.
So now I just think those actions really do kind of undermine LaFleur. It makes him look weak. Mm-hmm. McCarthy, I remember I forgot which game it was, Tampa, I think. And Rodgers was just like, screaming at him, and then they stand next to each other. And McCarthy's just like, what? Like, he's just like, okay, fine, whatever. But LaFleur is just so passive about it, and I wish he would bark back at him like he did when he first got here.
To your point, Matt LaFleur completely owned it after the game. He said that the guys bailed him out, and
Of course
he's going to say that. He's going to
I know,
fall on the
that's-
sword.
He's very passive with it.
That's where he should say, no, I disagree. We did it my way and we won. Sorry.
It worked
really,
out.
What can you imagine, Bill Belichick? I shouldn't always go to Belichick, but let's
He's the standard.
No, he's above. Could you imagine Mike Tomlin, saying, it's all my fault. I don't know why I did that, because really, even though he really believes that it was the right thing to do, anyway. Okay, let's move on.
One quick thing before we move on. You said something about the calls he made, taking the delay of game and then punting. I just want to reiterate that and get your opinion. Is that the sign of a coach finally accepting who his team is?
I thought so, because it's been all gas, no brake all season, even though this offense has been no gas, all brake.
That's a good question. That is a really good question.
And that's what I was thinking real time live was, both those times they kept the offense on the field, and I'm like, what are they doing? What you punt the ball. What are they? And both times they punted the ball. The way this team is designed is to clock control with offense, to set up its defense with favorable field position. It's not a defense that is dominant, that can handle bad positions time and time again, which is what was happening a lot earlier this season.
Guys, I feel like I have deja vu from asking this question, but is this the last we have seen of Amari Rodgers on punt return?
Yes.
I asked Matt LaFleur that after the game, and he was still not ready to say it definitively. I asked him point blank, is Keyshawn Nixon your new punt returner? And he said it will be evaluated. And then I asked him, what is at this point the argument for Amari Rodgers to continue being punt returner? And he said that there is confidence that he will catch the ball and make the right decision. And I have no idea.
Where is that confidence coming from?
Why? Because he's now put the ball on the ground 4 times on punt returns this season. 2 of their, if this was a loss tonight, two of their losses in what would have been a 6-game losing streak could be directly traced to muff punts.
How many fumbles did he have last year? 3?
Well, the stat that I saw tonight, I have not verified it myself, but the stat that I saw tonight on Twitter was 8 career catches, 7 career fumbles. It's incredible. That is hard to do.
Yeah. You can't put him on the field.
And he could be serviceable in the receiving corps.
Yeah.
If he could do what they've asked Randall Cobb to do if they would just let him do it, I feel like. But he's not your punt returner. And continuing to put him out there is dangerous.
Yeah, something's, they just can't trust him from this point on.
I'm stunned.
And I'm not sure about Keyshawn Nixon, given the way he caught that
he
punt.
palmed that
Or that
ball.
he even caught the punt. Well, it's at the 6-yard line, man. Let it roll in the end zone.
Let me tell you this, though. This is what I liked about it, Spoon. It was a bad decision, but 1, he didn't fumble it.
Yeah.
No, he sure didn't.
2, what has been our biggest knock against Amari Rodgers besides the fumbles? The first one was the fumbles. What's our second knock against Amari Rodgers as a punt returner? Not having the confidence to get up the field. That you sure as heck can't say Keyshawn Nixon wasn't confident to reach up there and grab that ball.
No, and he does hit it up hard.
He does.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they should consider Toure. I think I've watched him, and he seems like he's pretty confident catching the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And he's quick. He's really quick. And I don't know I know Kylan Hill's been working on punt returns. That's not a natural skill for him. I'd be curious if they've seen anything there. But
I'd
they
be
just
curious
can't go on with that.
When Cobb comes back, if they stick him back there just to catch it and tell him don't put it, just to keep it from getting put on the ground.
They could do that.
Well, they tried that last year, and he fumbled one off his face mask.
That's right. He sure did, didn't he?
I don't understand why they didn't go with Samori Toure as a punt returner immediately after Washington. This is a coaching staff that entered the season playing nothing but zone coverage and has since changed to say, okay, sometimes man coverage is okay. They
are so slow to react.
were extremely slow to put Josh Nijman to right tackle. They finally did that. They have been hit and miss and seem to be coming around over the last couple weeks to Aaron Jones being the engine of their offense. The
Press coverage, they've gone into press coverage. I think you just mentioned that.
The Amari Rodgers to the sideline and someone else a punt returner is the last reactive move that they've yet to make. And they, to your point, Spoon, they have been so slow to react in so many different areas. I don't know why that move wasn't made immediately after Washington, because at this point, you drop him back there to the field to punt at your own peril. It's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, that. They were lucky that didn't cost them the game. It cost them the game in Washington.
It could have very easily cost them today.
Absolutely. And it was a 14-point, possible 14-point
If they had lost today, that fumbled punt was the end of their season.
Yeah. I know if Ron Wolf was the coach, was the GM of this team, Mario Rodgers would be looking for a job tomorrow.
Yeah, and you know, he can do the pre-snap motions and everything, but as a receiver, unless I'm missing something, Cassidy, I haven't seen anything to make me think that he'd be a serviceable receiver either.
Yeah, I haven't seen the burst he had in college.
Yeah, I guess I'm just, and I'm thinking of when they went to him at Washington and they had no choice. We were about to get pulled on the field to play receiver at Washington.
Yeah, but he dropped the touchdown there, right?
Yeah, but so did Christian Watson. I just feel like I feel like he's got enough raw talent that it could be molded, but they just haven't used it in him at all. He could be shifty. I don't know.
I think Christian Watson's a lot more talented than Amari Rodgers.
I'm not saying send Amari Rodgers deep downfield. I'm saying use Amari Rodgers as a scat back.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't get rid of him. He's on a minimum, rookie minimum salary. You never know. In a third year, a guy can just blossom as a receiver, but I just wouldn't put him on punt returns right now. And I wouldn't cut him. There's no need to cut him.
No need to cut him. I agree with that. I wouldn't put him on the field.
Yeah.
Unless you had to.
Yes.
Yeah. And just a note, because I know Pete and I got a lot of questions about this on our Facebook Live, so just to note it here as well. The reason Ahmad was on the kickoffs is because Mason Crosby was dealing with his back injury all week. Mm-hmm. And as Pete was explaining, field goals, those are points, so you just power through it if you can. And the kickoffs, you have to get a running start. It's a little bit harder on that back, which is why they brought up another kicker.
Longer kick, too.
Yeah.
He did not do very well.
No.
I mean, his kicks were short, and that's why he's not with an NFL team. As we saw in camp, he can hit field goals.
Guys, short week now for the Packers. No victory Monday because they have a Thursday night game. So they'll be back in the building tomorrow. Darnell Savage, after the game, said, "Oh, my God, we have a game in 2 days." He said, "I'm not even going to watch the film from tonight. I got to go straight to Tennessee." So I don't know if it's 2 days, Monday, Tuesday.
4.
Yeah.
Feels like 2 days, though, for these guys.
Practice math.
Not a strong spirit with Mr. Savage.
So Derrick Henry coming to town against a suspect rush defense could be interesting. We said they needed to split these games at the very least. They've at least got one of these wins under their belt. Moving forward into a short week, I mean, what's the best medicine for that? Can you almost just you don't get to practice as much. You don't get to game plan quite as much.
2 walkthroughs. That's all they can do. Going into overtime's the worst thing that can happen to you going into a Thursday game. And so, the other worst thing is you have to travel for a Thursday game. So Tennessee and Green Bay are probably in the same boat.
And you know what else is a bad thing going into a Thursday game? Losing your 6th straight. And that's where it's a big win because it propels them into this Thursday night game, which is, I think, just me talking, I think another must-win game if they want to have any mathematical relevancy at the end of the year.
I agree.
So now with that said, that's the intangible side. The tangible side is right here. It's right here on the box score. If they can duplicate this, they got a real shot. They're not a bad football team if they do this, and that means 38 carries for 200 yards. It means 20 passes and picking your shots deep when they're there and using the action fake game to set up the vertical passing game to complement the run game. If they can duplicate that, they got a shot. I just don't know if they can.
Yeah. Tennessee's flawed, but they're not flawed like that on defense. Like they will bring it. You know, where they're flawed is offense. All they can do is run it. So you just got to figure out a way to stop Derrick Henry.
Questions persist at their quarterback position. So, well, we will be there to cover it for you all, and we will continue to have wrap-up coverage for you from Packers versus Cowboys on PackersNews.com. So stay tuned for that, and then we will see you soon on this short week. Thanks so much, guys. This has been the Green 19 podcast from JS Online and PackersNews.com.
Green 19!